This is the Fujifilm GFX 50S II, and today we're going to be talking about some of its features and why I still enjoy using this camera for my photography. This Fujifilm camera is a medium format camera. So what is a medium format camera? So the sensor in this camera is 1.7 times bigger than a full frame camera. As you can see, it is drastically bigger than a full frame camera. I even got a comparison right here where you can see both the full frame and the medium format right here. So as you can see, it's a big difference. I'm trying not to grab my sensor because y'all know how the sensors are. But as you can see, the sensors are totally different. The medium format sensor is 1.7 times bigger than the full frame sensor, which means this sensor has way more pixels than a full frame camera. It's a 51.4 megapixel sensor. The dynamic range in the 50S II is pretty excellent. It delivers around 9.6 and 9.8. The 50S II has a color bit of 14. The color bit is basically the amount of colors and how vibrant the colors will be when you take the photo. So for instance, my Sony a7S III shoots at 10 color bit. To help you understand color bit a little bit more, color bit is basically how much vibrant your colors will be in your camera. I have a camera that shoots 10-bit color, and the colors in the 10-bit is very, very vibrant, but not compared to the 14-bit in the Fujifilm GFX 50S II. The colors are way more contrasted and saturated in this camera. Okay, let's put this lens back on this sensor, because we all know that having that sensor wide open like that gives us chills. So let's talk about the design of the GFX. Overall, I'm very impressed with the design of the GFX. It's a very premium feel. With the overall feel and having it in my hand, it feel marvelous compared to my other cameras, because I say bigger hands, and so my other cameras are a lot smaller. But since this is a medium format camera, it has to be a lot bigger for the images and the sensor. And so like having it in my hands, I feel more secure when I'm taking my photo because of the size. And it's tough. It's built tough. It feels like a heavy metal. And that's what you want when you buying this medium format camera. You want something to feel premium, something that is worth your money. So you don't want to have something that feels cheap and lightweight. You want something that feels nice. At least for me, I love the size of the GFX. I'm very impressed with the build quality. So the ports, it got two ports right here on the side. It has a headphone jack and a microphone jack as well, alongside with the USB-C and a HDMI, micro HDMI at that. It's not a regular size HDMI. You can also shoot video with the 50S II. It has a pretty big display, which I love. The quality of the display is top notch. It's very high quality. When I go to show my subject or my talent the photos, they'll tell me like, you don't even have to edit that photo. That photo looks great just in camera. That's how great the display on this camera is. It also tilts out, and it has this second tilt where it tilts up. So far, if I'm like this, the display would tilt up just like that. I love that Fujifilm made it where it can fold this way, because a lot of times I'm not always up here. I'm down here just to get a low angle, and when I flip it up, I can see everything. So I love the fact that they actually add that little level here to make it flip right up just like that. It does extends out too, as well as that second fold too. So it's pretty nice, and it's a nice built display too. It's pretty thick, and this display is also touch screen. So if you touch the screen to get focus, it does a pretty good job with that. It has a joystick on the back, and I like how they kept the buttons on here pretty minimal. It's not too many buttons on here, where it has this menu, the display, the playback, the joystick. Then it got two buttons up here on the top, which I really appreciate from Fujifilm, because when you shooting, you don't want to have so many buttons. You know, when stuff happen and when stuff go wrong with your camera, you don't want to have so many buttons where you have to figure out like, oh, okay, it's this button. Oh, okay, this might be that button, and you just hitting buttons at one point. But especially if you're a beginner. But I like the simple fact that they kept it simple, because you already know once you get the hang of the camera, you're like, okay, I know exactly what to hit, because they don't have too many buttons. And I like the fact they give you a switch for your manual and autofocus. I love that feature. This top screen up here too, you can actually make it go where it can be daylight and sunlight too. Like it got a darker setting and a lighting setting. And what's this LED screen? What's this screen up here got? It shows your histogram, or it shows your shutter speed, your f-stop, your ISO, whether you're in focus. It even tells you if you have auto white balance on. So that's a nice feature from Fujifilm that they put in there. I really enjoy that feature. This camera also has dual slots for SD cards. Of course, storage for a medium format is large. If you're going to invest in a medium format, storage is key. One thing that I wish they would do with the Fujifilm GFXs, I'm not sure if the 100S has, I don't think Fujifilm has internal storage for their cameras yet, but Hasselblad does. That's one thing that I envy of Hasselblad cameras, that they actually built in internal storage, because that is key when you film when you taking photos with these cameras, because having a dual slot is a much needed for taking these photos. Since the sensor is so big and catching more detail of the photo, it's gonna be a massive file size. It's a much needed dual slot for SD cards, much needed. But it does not take Express or any other different types of card. It only takes SD cards, and I imagine they will eventually change that. But this camera does not take any other types of card. It only takes SD cards. Like I said in the past, the 50S2 is a pretty big and bulky camera. It weighs 900 grams and 1.98 pounds. Yeah, so this guy, he's a soldier. He's pretty big. He's not lightweight. He's not lightweight at all. Now, one of the downfalls of buying this camera is the autofocus. But I will say this, it is faster than the other Hasselblad cameras. However, when I first received this camera, the autofocus, I wasn't a big fan of it, because I was used to the Sony a7S III. We all know how lightning fast that autofocus on that camera is. I was used to a much faster focus system. Using this 50S2 was a lot slower in getting in focus, but it holds focus pretty well for it to be so slow. What makes it better than the Hasselblad, that you can actually touch the screen to get your focus and don't have to continue to tap your screen to keep focus. The Hasselblad, I've heard, you have to continuously tap the screen to keep your focus. With this camera, you don't. You basically tap the screen, and the autofocus is way better than the Hasselblad, because you just tap it and it keeps its focus. Because it has, and the reason why it keeps its focus is because the face detect. It got very good face detection with this camera. So thank Fuji for that. That is really a +1. If you're used to using full frame for your photography, it's gonna slow you down, because the autofocus is not as fast, of course, but you can still get great, amazing photos. In my opinion, better. Full frame cameras, I'm not knocking full frame cameras, but my opinion, I love Fujifilm. I feel like when I take my photos, I don't want it to be too quick all the time, because I want to actually get that right pose and that right composition to really tell that story of that person. So that, like I said, that's my opinion on my shoots. Of course, there are times where I do want it to be faster, but at the same time, I want to make sure that every photo I take, if not literally every photo I take, but just about every time I push that button to take that photo, it's gonna come out as a mwah. It's just gonna be perfect. That's the only downfall I would say about the medium format cameras, that is a lot slower than your full frame, but it is better than the Hasselblad, because you don't have to keep tapping the screen here. So anyway, on this nice display. But anyway, that's also next. But if you're in the studio, you're gonna love this camera, because it's really made for studio work. It's made to really kind of sit on your tripod and get the right shot. It's not really made for running gun. It's made for studio. But I can say at least the 50S2 is perfect for studio work. Fujifilm obviously didn't make it for street photography because, you know, it's not as fast, but it can still get it done. But they mainly made it for studio work. So if you do a lot of studio work, I highly recommend checking out the 50S2 if you got the budget. Now this is kind of like the little brother of the Fujifilm GFX 100S. It's a cheaper price point. So I just looked up the price just to make sure I had the price point right. Cause I knew it was a while since I had it. I didn't realize how long I had it. I seen 28 to 31. So it's a lot more cheaper than the old price. I paid around $4,200 just for the body. I had it about a year now, so the prices, of course, was different. As far as worth, the quality, the build quality, the type of photos you would get with the 50S2, the lenses are very expensive for this camera. They don't come cheap as well. But the lens that I have right here is an 80mm lens. It's a GFX lens. It's made practically for this GFX camera, and you can tell, like, as you see, it's a pretty big glass. It's not small. It's pretty big. And my favorite feature, since I've been shooting with Fujifilm, that I wish literally all, even my video lens will have, is a aperture ring. You can actually change the aperture ring on the lens. Instead of dialing on your camera button, you can do it just straight from the camera lens, and it got this nice click, like if you can hear, like, very satisfying. I like it. I like about this lens too, for manual focus. I personally, when I first started, I did not like manual focus too much because you have to be so sensitive to the focus ring, and I really like shooting manual focus with this lens because it is enormous. Like, I don't have to be on my little full frame lenses. I have to be like kind of like this, but I could just literally, my hands are a lot more accustomed to this. That it really made me a fan of manual focus when I started shooting with this lens. As far as the GFX lenses, they do have a couple lenses, but not a lot of lenses for the GFX. But don't go looking and thinking you're gonna find as many like you do for your full frames. It's not that many. It's probably like, I don't know, 10 maybe in all you can find, but you will be able to find a good range of focal lengths when you go check out these lenses. And like I said, the price point of these lenses is not cheap. I purchased this lens for about $2,300. They're not a cheap piece of glass. They're not a cheap piece of glass at all. As far as your image quality, the sharpness, the IBIS and all, the IBIS in these lenses are amazing. And speaking of IBIS, the IBIS is the stabilization. The IBIS dictates how stable your image is. So if I'm moving, or if I move a little bit, the lens will compensate for that little subtle movement. That's the IBIS. If you have the budget, I would definitely recommend the 50S2 for your photography or your studio photography needs. Like I said, it runs around now 28 to 3100 for the body alone. Compared to other media formats such as like the Hasselblad X2D, the 50S2 is drastically cheaper. That's why I feel like Fujifilm has the upper hand in the medium format game, because this runs about 3100. The Hasselblad has probably a more premium feel as far as the build quality and the minimalist of the setup of the camera, but you cannot ignore this camera and say the Hasselblad just won hands down. And I can beg to differ of what reason why I would choose either the 50S2 or the 100S of Fujifilm. I will argue that point. So no disrespect to Hasselblad. I'm just saying, just far as if you're someone looking for a medium format camera, I think this will be a good starting point to get into the medium format family. It is a joy to have. It is really a joy to have. I enjoy every shoot I have with it. Thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you got a lot out of it. And if I miss anything in this video about the overview of this camera, let me know in the comments. I will go down and scope it out. But if not, like and subscribe for more videos, and make sure you hit that bell to be notified when I come out with more videos as well. And man, I can't wait to see you in the next video. I'll see you when I see you.